Genesis chapter 41. After 2 full years, Pharaoh dreamed that he stood by the river Nile. And behold, there came up out of the river Nile 7 well-favored cows, sleek and handsome and fat, and they grazed in the reed grass in the marshy pasture. And behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the river Nile, ill-favored and gaunt and ugly, and stood by the fat cows on the bank of the river Nile. And the ill-favored, gaunt, and ugly cows ate up the 7 well-favored cows and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. But he slept and dreamed the second time, and behold, 7 ears of grain came out on one stalk, plump and good. And behold, after them 7 ears of grain sprouted, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the 7 thin ears of grain devoured the 7 plump and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So when the morning came, his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians and all the wise men of Egypt. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but not one could interpret them to him. And the chief butler said to Pharaoh, I remember my faults today. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker, we dreamed a dream in the same night, he and I. We dreamed each of us according to the significance of the interpretation of his dream. And there was with us a young man, a Hebrew, a servant to the captain of the guard and chief executioner. And we told him our dreams, and he interpreted them to us, to each man according to the significance of his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came to pass. I was restored to my office as chief butler, and the baker was hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. But Joseph first shaved himself, changed his clothes, and made himself presentable. Then he came into Pharaoh's presence. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. And I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream and interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, It is not in me. God, not I, will give Pharaoh a favorable answer of peace. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood on the bank of the river Nile, and behold, there came up out of the river Nile 7 fat, sleek, and handsome cows, and they grazed in the reed grass of a marshy pasture. And behold, 7 other cows came up after them, undernourished, gaunt, and ugly, just skin and bones, such emancipated animals as I have never seen in all of Egypt. And the lean and ill-favored cows ate up the 7 fat cows that had come first. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be detected and known that they had eaten them, for they were still thin and emancipated, as at the beginning. And then I woke. But again I fell asleep and dreamed. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears of grain growing, one on one stalk, plump and good. And behold, 7 other ears, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. Now I told this to the magicians, but there was no one who could tell me what it meant. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, The 2 dreams are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears of grain are 7 years. The 2 dreams are one in their meaning. And the 7 thin and ill-favored cows that came up after them are 7 years, and also the 7 empty ears of grain, blighted and shriveled by the east wind. They are 7 years of hunger and famine. This is the message, just as I have told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Take note, 7 years of great plenty throughout the land of Egypt are coming. Then there will come 7 years of hunger and famine, and there will be so much want that all the great abundance of the previous years will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and hunger will exhaust the land. And the plenty will become quite unknown in the land because of the following famine, for it will be very woefully severe. That the dream was sent twice to Pharaoh, and in 2 forms, indicates that this thing which God will very soon bring to pass is fully prepared and established by God. So now let Pharaoh seek out and provide a man discreet, understanding, proficient, and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt as governor. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him select and appoint officers over the land, and take 1/5 of the produce of the whole land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years, year by year. Let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and lay up grain under the direction and authority of Pharaoh, and let them retain food in fortified granaries in the city. And that the food shall be put in the store for the country against the 7 years of hunger and famine that are to come upon the land of Egypt, so that the land may not be ruined and cut off by the famine. And the plan seemed good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Can we find this man's equal, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? And Pharaoh said to Joseph, Forasmuch as your God has shown you all this, there is nobody as intelligent, discreet, and understanding and wise as you are. You shall have charge over my house, and over all the people shall be governed according to your word, with reverence, submission, and obedience. Only in matters of the throne will I be greater than you are. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in official vestments of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. He made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and officials cried before him, Bow the knee. And he set him over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without you shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him Asnath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph made an inspection tour of all the land of Egypt. Joseph, who had been in Egypt 13 years, was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and went about his duties through all the land of Egypt. In the 7 abundant years the earth brought forth by handfuls for each seed planted. And he gathered up all the surplus food of the 7 good years in the land of Egypt, and stored up the food in the cities. He stored away in each city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph gathered grain as the sand of the sea, very much, until he stopped counting, for it could not be measured. Now to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of the famine came, whom Asnath, daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On, bore to him. And Joseph called the firstborn Manasseh, making to forget. For God, said he, has made me to forget all my toil and hardship, and all my father's house. And the second he called Ephraim, to be fruitful, for he said, God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. When the 7 years of plenty were ended in the land of Egypt, the 7 years of scarcity and famine began, as Joseph had said there would. The famine was in all the surrounding lands, but in all of Egypt there was food. So when all the land of Egypt was weakened with hunger, the people there cried to Pharaoh for food. And Pharaoh said to them all, Go to Joseph, what he says to you do. When the famine was over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine grew extremely distressing in the land of Egypt. And all the countries came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the known earth.